Good evening, I'm John Carter and welcome to Poland Daily. Deputy Prime Minister Beata Szydło, who is leading the negotiations with Teachers' Union on behalf of the government, confirmed that there are guaranteed funds allocated for pay rises in the national budget. The funds will be made available earlier, from January 2020 to September this year. The government's proposal has not satisfied the Polish Teachers Association, who continue to demand 1,000 zloty monthly raise.
Chairman of the Agrarian Polish People's Party, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, stated that if an arrangement is not made by the government, he will appeal to the head of the Polish Teachers Association for the strike to occur, but not during the exam session. The ruling party made a mess, and now the students will have to suffer. We deem to call for strikes very reasonable. However, there is one more solution, a much better one, a legislation which had been filed in the parliament by our party, a 1,000 zlotys pay rise right now. Let the Law and Justice Party support this legislation, then there will be no strikes, no problems. If they are willing to boast about the booming economy, they should divide the fruits of it accordingly. Katarzyna Lubnauer, chairman of the Modern Party, underlines that there is never a good time for a strike, as every date will be to the detriment of both students and parents.
The government should try everything it can to prevent the strike from happening. I understand the anxiety and fear amongst the parents, but I also sympathize with the teachers. It's high time the Central Examination Committee made up its mind. Are the exams going to take place as planned? Will they be moved forward a week, 2 weeks? Meanwhile, the government has an entire week for talks. Hopefully they won't squander it.
Going on strike during the culmination of school exams is a very bad idea for many reasons, said Jan Maria Jackowski, senator of the Law and Justice Party. Taking children and young people hostage in the dispute between the teacher community and the government regarding teacher compensation is firstly profoundly unethical, secondly harmful to children, and thirdly harms teachers themselves. The last resort talks between the government and the teachers' unions are set to take place on April 1st. Should they bring no consensus, the Polish Teachers Association are planning to go on strike from April 8th.
In just a few weeks, over 10 million Polish pensioners will receive an additional benefit of 888 zloty, or roughly €200. In 3 weeks' time, Poles will vote in the European parliamentary election. And according to the opposition, the extra money is being spent to boost the ruling party's performance in the polls. The Deputy Prime Minister, Beata Szydło, defended the move, claiming that it will serve the underprivileged.
Throw them a bone just before the election. It is only 888 zlotys a person. These were the words of the leader of the opposition party, the European Coalition. And I'm sorry that such words were said by the former Prime Minister, who should be more sensitive and should understand the realities that Poles are living, especially coming from a man that earns dozens of thousands zlotys a month. For a pensioner who gets 1,100 zlotys a month with the smallest of pensions, this 888 zlotys will mean a lot.
13 emerytury czy 13 renty będzie miało znaczenie fundamentalne.
Today, the former head of the Internal Security Agency, Dariusz Łuczak, testified in front of the VAT Fraud Investigation Committee. Łuczak was asked, among other things, about the agency's priorities during his term of office.
Dariusz Łuczak, były szef Agencji Bezpieczeństwa Wewnętrznego.
Dariusz Łuczak was the head of the Internal Security Agency from April 2013 to November 2015. Łuczak, when asked today about the Internal Security Agency's priorities during his term of office, answered that economic security was a priority. He was also asked about fraud and the agency's budget. The former head of Internal Security Agency confirmed the words of his predecessor Bondaruk, who claimed during his testimony that lack of financial help was a huge problem. Łuczak emphasized that this matter made the agency's work difficult.
Budżet agencji.
This was a huge problem. The budget of the Internal Security Agency amounted to 500 million zlotys, and this institution needed much more than that. I think that all the Internal Security Agency's duties are blocking a focus on fraud, which is the most important when it comes to states' interests.
The witness testified in front of the Amber Gold Investigation Committee in May last year. When asked about the Internal Security Agency's work, he answered that this institution was and still is a jurisdictional trash can.
Gdy pytany był o specyfikę pracy w Agencji Bezpieczeństwa Wewnętrznego.
Space exploration has made the headlines today when US Vice President Mike Pence marked the year 2024 as the time when American astronauts will return to the moon. Poland's former president and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Lech Wałęsa, also spoke about space. He said that our planet might be in peril when more advanced civilization from another galaxy sees the state of our politics.
Na innych galaktykach jest 3 poziomy rozwoju.
In other galaxies, there are 3 levels of intellectual development. We are at the bottom. When the higher civilization arrives on our planet and sees what the hell we are doing in our politics, when we threaten destabilization with Putin, they will put a stop to it by splitting our planet in half. Everything will fold in and we will all be crushed. They will wait 5,000 years, then send us Adam and Eve and will allow us to develop the Earth back to a standard similar to what we have now. We have to take this kind of development into consideration.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm John Carter. Stay tuned after the break for Poland Daily Weather. It's followed by the business, and then it's the culture, travel and the history.
Good evening, I'm Paulina Ottersteing and welcome again to Poland Daily Weather. Tonight the temperatures will go up again a bit, up to 7 degrees in the area of Wrocław. 5 degrees will be seen in central Poland, also in other parts of the country like around Koszalin, also in Krakow and Katowice, and the minimum temperature tonight will be 2 degrees Celsius. In Białystok some fog is going to appear around Olsztyn. Now let's check what will happen tomorrow. Tomorrow in Poland, some parts will be very sunny, like the area of Koszalin and Szczecin with 12 degrees and full sun. The maximum temperature tomorrow, there will be 13 degrees around Bydgoszcz and Poznań, where some showers will appear as well. Warsaw will see 10 degrees with rain as well, and 11 degrees will be seen in Łódź, Krakow and Wrocław. This is all for tonight. Thank you.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight we will talk about United States and Israel. Donald Trump has been relieved from the charges of collusion with Russia. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, 2 weeks before election, went to the United States, visited the country, and was granted the U.S. presidential decision of that the Golan Heights will remain as a part of Israel. What all that means to the world politics, what all that means to the Israel, Near East, and maybe to us, we will ask Mr. Artur Górniewski of Lazarski University. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
So, let's start from this 2 years long investigation when the liberal media in the United States and in the world were charging President of the United States, elected president by majority of Americans, of electoral fraud, in essence.
Yeah, you are right. The so-called progressive media were selling the story about the collusion between President Trump, his people, and the Russian president, Vladimir Putin.
Or the Russian propaganda machine.
But of course, on the orders of the Russian president.
Right.
But as we see now, after 22 months, and after spending something like over $20 million, and after investigating and interviewing more than 500 people, there is nothing left against President Trump. No evidence, no smoking gun, which would prove that President Trump colluded with the Russians. Of course, we had on the way 37 people from Trump's associates accused and prosecuted, some of them at least, but there is no hard evidence that there was collusion, that Russia helped Trump win the elections. So it's a big victory to President Trump. This is probably the best week of his presidency. And let's remember that the support for President Trump is oscillating around 50%, which is very, very good sign for future, for his re-election bid. And Democrats are very weak, divided. We don't see strong candidate which could be really a threat to the re-election process of President Trump. So we see that a lot of money has been spent, and there is nothing really which proves that President Trump was not only helped by Russians, but also obstructed justice. At least this is what the 4-page special report based on Mueller report prepared by Attorney General William Barr says. There is no obstruction of justice and no collusion.
This will definitely have an effect on the upcoming election, but this is really like 2 years from now, year and a half that we will have the voting. What is happening in America and American politics that is strange to me is that the American main politicians tried to walk sort of middle of the way, far away from the right side and far away from the left side, try to navigate the Christian moral values, regardless whether you are Democrat or Republican. From our perspective, both of those representatives of the parties had pretty much the same kind of attitude towards main global challenges. Well, right now, we see Donald Trump that is trying to solve first of all, name the problems and then solve them, and politics of democratic politics who are extending to the socialist narrative, to far left options. What happened in America? Are they out of their mind, or maybe the society changed that this can resonate among voters?
We can say that there is a renaissance of conservative values, Christian values in the United States, because this is what they showed in 2016 when President Trump has been elected with the help of evangelical circles support. So we see that this progressive America or leftist institutions and organizations are not particularly strong at this time, and there is nothing on the horizon suggesting that Beto O'Rourke or some progressive socialist candidates could win next election in the United States. So we can say we have now America going back to roots, to this Puritan origins more than looking ahead into some sort of leftist experiments, which they already to some extent implemented and went through in 1960s, for example, or later in 1970s. So I think that conservatives and conservative wave is now still on the rise, which is a good sign for President Trump and his chances for re-election in 2020.
President Trump will build his electoral power over the economic measures. He will tell,
of course,
unemployment is low,
booming. Today, this morning, I read in the Wall Street Journal that, for example, California is expanding in terms of economy, is adding more jobs.
California, the state that does not like Donald Trump at all.
And which actually had some periods of very bad weather, for example. People are running away from California because of wildfires, for example, or other natural disasters caused maybe by global warming. But despite that, American unemployment is at the lowest from 1980s. It's a little bit more than 3%. We have solid economic growth in the United States. And this is what Americans want. They want prosperity, good economy. Maybe it is just coincidence, but if it is coincidence, we can say that Donald Trump is a very lucky man, because it's a good time for American economy, and I think Americans want try to change this. They want things to stay this, even if they criticize Donald Trump. They like him, maybe psychologically, because he's like one of them. He's not a perfect man. But definitely we see also conservative sentiments on the rise in the United States. And look what happened now. Only after 2 years in office, President Trump managed to introduce 2 new Supreme Court justices, conservative Christian justices, to the court. So it's a historical moment, even from this perspective, and also this alliance with Israel. This is what many evangelicals like, because they believe that who helps and supports Israel is liked by God.
Right. There is one word that we should mention even very shortly. Very important part of the policy of Donald Trump is China and setting the trade relationships with that country.
Of course, it seems there will be a kind of compromise between China and the United States, because they are two big and important countries to fail. So they will choose to cooperate instead of fighting. And it's even more important for the People's Republic of China to have good relations and to implement those 6 or 5 points on the American agenda. They want to China to finish subsidies to the Chinese industries. And first of all, they want China to stop stealing intellectual property, for example.
Will China stop that, do you think?
They will say so, and maybe they will do something cosmetic, but we are not naive children. We know they won't stop, but it's a different matter.
Yeah, and it is actually very interesting, and we should really devote some more time to the phenomenal growth of the People's Republic of China, and hundreds of millions of people out of the poverty.
Remember that growth is also slowing down, and China started this year, for example, to get older, and instead of 150 million new people born, less people were born last year, something like this. So China is also now undergoing some changes, and they will look for cooperation with the United States, for example, because of the slowing down of Chinese economy.
Yes, but that's a topic of another conversation. Artur Górniewski of Lazarski University was our guest, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Hello, I'm Paulina, Ottersteing, and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's look what will happen tomorrow in Poland during the day. So the maximum temperature will be 13 degrees in Bydgoszcz and Poznań, 12 degrees in Koszalin and Szczecin with quite a bit of sun, and the minimum temperature will be 9 degrees in the eastern parts around Lublin. Also in Rzeszów we will see 9 degrees, and some showers will appear tomorrow in many parts of the country. Warsaw will see 10 degrees Celsius with showers as well. Now let's check the situation in Europe for tomorrow. So as we can see, the northern parts of Europe will be much warmer, 15 degrees in Stockholm, 14 degrees in Oslo and 7 in Helsinki, 16 degrees will be seen in Dublin and 18 in London with full sun, and the warmest again will be Lisbon with 23 degrees. This is all for tonight. Thank you, and I'm wishing you a beautiful evening. Good night.
The Scouting Association of the Polish Republic was founded on the 12th of February in 1989. At present, the Scouting Association has over 15,000 members. It is an associate member of the Confederation of European Scouts. The Scouting Association is a public benefit organization that was established in 1989. It aims to continue the traditions and educational thought of several generations of Polish Scouts. The roots of the ZHR, or the Scouting Association, date back to 1980, when the Circle of Scouting Instructors was created. Andrzej Małkowski gathered together independent environmental scouts and instructors. The Scouting Association of the Republic is a community of friends, children, youth, and adults who, based on Christian values, through Scout leaders, work on themselves to help others. They seek adventure and pursue other elements of the Scouting life that educate a person to find a life full of happiness, to be responsible for oneself and for one's fellow citizens, and to take on the challenges of the modern world.
Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. In today's episode, we will be talking to another scout, Mr. Wiesław Turzański. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Let's start with a question about your role in scouting.
I have been a scout instructor for the last 30 years. I joined the scouting movement in the 1980s. At that point, it was an informal structure which wanted to bring back true scouting in Poland. That was between 1980 and 1981, times of the Andrzej Małkowski Scout Instructors Council. This was sort of the solidarity movement for us, scouts, a way to see how scouts could be run if they were not broken down during communism. When martial law was introduced on December 13, 1981, it stopped this period of optimistic reconstruction of the association, at least on the side of law. And since an organization could not have been set up legally and openly, there were talks of informal activity. That included many interesting programs, such as the White Services, who accompanied the Pope John Paul II during visits to his Polish homeland. However, the years 1988 to 1989, right before the political breakthrough in Poland, was a time when the opposition community decided to set up a new organization that would work under the traditional rules of the Scout movement, namely to serve God, Poland and our homeland. This was the idea behind the formation of Scouting Association of the Republic, which was established on February 12 during its first ever meeting in Warsaw. I also participated in this meeting, so I am in fact a founding member.
Ja w tym spotkaniu również uczestniczyłem, więc jestem członkiem założycielem.
And scouting in Poland was established about 30 years ago, is that correct? And I know that it is based on pre-war values. Did it function before the war as well?
Myślę, że to jest troszkę bardziej złożone, ponieważ pierwsze drużyny na ziemiach polskich powstały przez 110 lat.
I think that this is a more complex matter because the first scout units in the areas of Poland were set up over 110 years ago, in the year 1909, maybe 1910. During the times of regaining independence, Andrzej Małkowski famously said, "Polish scouts are scouting and independence." Almost 90% of the members of the then scouting movement, which was just budding at the time, joined the fight for independence, that is, until 1921. Before that year, we had the Wielkopolskie and Śląskie uprisings, as well as the Polish-Bolshevik War, with the Battle of Warsaw being a very important episode in that part of history. I believe that in all the battles, all the spots you could think of related to Polish struggle for independence, you could find young Poles who wanted to make their mark through scouting. The interwar period was a time of great development of the organization, which had 230,000 members in its ranks right before the outbreak of World War II. This was the Polish Scouting Association, the original one, which was established in 1918 by gathering youth from various organizations coming from different partitions. The Polish Scouting Association experienced a period of turbulent growth in the 1930s under the guidance of Michał Grażyński, the mayor of Śląskie province. Here we can note a legendary meeting, a summit organized for the 25th anniversary of scouting in Poland, taking place in Spała, 1935, right next to the residency of then-President Mościcki. Over 25,000 people, Polish girls and boys, flocked to this event, but they were not the only ones to attend. There were also friends of scouts, as well as scouts who did their service outside of Poland, in Polish diasporas all over the world.
During Holy Mass on World Youth Day in Krakow, Pope Francis announced that Panama would be the next host for a world meeting of Scouts. A meeting in the Southern Hemisphere was a distant target for the ZHR Scouts from Poland. The president of Panama, appreciating the involvement of ZHR in medical security, invited their representatives to meet. Participation in World Youth Day on the border between the Americas, that is Panama, between North and South America, and being in Central America is a perfect place for this gathering. The entire Polish scouting organization, in particular the Scout Volunteer Ambulance Service, are preparing themselves for this event.
And what was the role of Scouts during the Second World War?
Druga wojna światowa jak gdyby zamyka pewien okres żywiołowego rozwoju.
World War II closes a certain chapter of tumultuous growth for the association, which gave a certain foundation to tackle the enormous tragedy that World War II undoubtedly was. On one hand, the Scouts were preparing for service. That is one of the main roles of the Scouts: service to God, Poland and homeland. Those words and maxims translated into real action. That was the essence of Scouting, to create a situation in which they could be educated and taught certain values through active involvement. And so the moment of truth came. The older boys, who either were of age or were just coming of age, they were called up into the army and later joined the guerrilla movement. On the other hand, there were younger boys and girls for whom new, specific programs were developed. Scout girls took care of paramedics, while the younger boys had the legendary Grey Ranks. The Grey Ranks were built on an ingenious idea of dividing their members into three groups. One could say they were three levels of nurturing the youth. First, there were the Zawiszacy, the youngest group. After them, there were combat schools, those who were learning how to develop their minds and knowledge. As we know, Polish education system was difficult to maintain during the time of war. Combat schools also dabbled with minor sabotage. These stories were written down in the book by Aleksander Kamiński in Kamienie na Szaniec. That sabotage was not just limited to painting patriotic and anti-Nazi symbols on the walls, but also scaring photographers who would display photographs of the Germans and many, many others. Finally, the oldest group, the assault groups. I even have a pin worn by one of my leaders while he was in an assault group of the Zośka battalion. He gave me this pin as a keepsake. Assault groups were the oldest boys. In general, they formed two major battalions, Zośka and Parasol. Even though they mostly made their name during the Warsaw Uprising, the Parasol battalion led diversion maneuvers like the attacks on Koper or Kucia, who were the leaders of SS and the police in the districts of Warsaw and Krakow. One must not forget Operation Arsenal, which was the first major operation of the Grey Ranks. Each year we are commemorating the anniversary of this operation on March 26th. It was the first time when the prisoners were liberated in Warsaw during the war. The aim of the attack was to rescue one of the scouts by his friends from Zośka battalion. This was the element of armed battle, though not all their missions revolved around guns. There is a common misconception that the boys from Grey Ranks would run around with rifles and Molotov cocktails. There were instances during the Warsaw Uprising when each subunit took to battle. It is important to mention the youngest, Zawiszacy, who became famous thanks to their brilliant idea and execution of delivering posts. They would carry the correspondence among the fighting soldiers as well as families divided by barricades. Zawiszacy would often squeeze through tunnels in order to get to certain difficult-to-reach areas. They carried military orders, reports and letters to families which described what had happened since the mail last got through.
Pocztę do najbliższych, informując o tym, co przez te 63 dni akurat się dzieje.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we will be talking to our guest, Mr. Krzysztof Jabłonka, a Polish historian, about the role Poland played in the Second World War. The Poles fought with weapon in hand not only in Poland, but on multiple fronts all across Europe. With our guest, we will explore the contributions of Poland in the Second World War. After World War II has ended for the Western Allies in Europe, there are still armed struggles going on, especially in the Eastern Europe, and Poland involved. And I was wondering how the armed struggle against the Soviet Union looked like.
Już powstanie warszawskie.
The Warsaw Uprising itself left Stalin with a question whether he was going west to liberate or to conquer. The fact that the Red Army did not come to the aid of the Warsaw insurgents showed Stalin's true colors. His hatred of Poles grew even larger, and after the Polish lands were taken by the Soviet Union, there were mass repercussions of those who didn't agree with the system change. The communists knew that they have nothing to win over the Polish nation and that they would never win in free elections. That is why they organized rigged elections, took power unlawfully, and to add to it all, they forced Poles to thank them for it. However, Poles never did that. Soldiers, which the communists wanted to make cursed, meaning outside the society, and later forgotten and removed from the pages of history, became indomitable soldiers. We care for their memory today. They were those who stayed loyal until the very end to the oath they took, and in the name of the whole nation refused to be enslaved. Enslavement came nonetheless, but it was already against the Poles' will, which was represented by 1,200 commanders of such partisan units. They were mostly members of the Freedom and Independence anti-communist resistance group, shortly called WIII. The date of murder of the last of the movement's commanders, March 1st, became a national holiday in Poland. They died in 1951. The main general of the underground army, the chief commander of Kiev, a special division of the Polish Home Army, Emil Fildorf, codenamed Nil, was also murdered. Rotmeister Witold Polecki, one of the greatest heroes of all European resistance movements during the Second World War, was killed too. The communists never proved he was guilty of anything, and what is more, they were scared of his patriotism. He voluntarily went to Auschwitz concentration camp to report on what was happening there, since no one knew that at the time. He even organized a complicated conspiracy network inside the camp between the prisoners. He then orchestrated 3 prisoner escapes from the camp and got out himself during the last one, proceeding to take part in the Warsaw Uprising. He was arrested by the Communist Security Service and murdered. More than 200,000 people unwilling to be enslaved were killed. The last anti-communist soldier who refused to lay down his weapon was Józef Franczak, codenamed Lalek. He was shot on October 21st, 1963. Before I finish, I would like to add that in 1966, Poles were celebrating the 1000th anniversary of the christening of Poland, which the communists wanted to turn into the millennial anniversary of the founding of the state of Poland. However, they failed at achieving this goal. The christening washed Poles from communism and allowed them to be free, which happened in the year 1990.
Obmył Polaków z komunizmu i uczynił zdolnych do bycia wolnymi, co stało się w 1990 roku.
Does the anti-communist movement have a role to play in the first election after the Second World War? How do those elections look like, and how much of an influence do you think the anti-communist movement had?
Trzeba powiedzieć, że od samego początku, jak Armia Czerwona wkracza.
Since the first moment the Red Army stepped into the Polish lands, the Soviets feared any signs of democracy. From the very beginning, they used all forms of autocracy, for example, the Communist Secret Service, the Security Office, which later transformed into the Security Service, responsible for various means of oppression. The Communists wanted to terrorize people, but at the same time they hoped that with a series of reforms, like the nationalization of the industry or the agricultural reform, they would be able to actually win in free elections. After 2 years, it had become clear that Poles would never vote for them. The main pre-election test was a referendum. However, it was a referendum which was rigged as well. The first 2 questions were made especially obvious. Do you wish the lost Polish lands to be returned to Poland? Naturally, every Pole would want that. The third one was a tricky one. It regarded the second chamber of the Polish parliament, the Senate, but it was formulated in reverse. Do you wish the Senate chamber to be abolished? It was constructed that way so that the communists could advertise it with a slogan 3 times yes. Poles were to learn the hard way that the communists wanted to hear only yes, yes, yes. The referendum was therefore their trial test for the elections. The results of the referendum were so unfavorable that they had to cover it up with a fake story of a war crime in the city of Kielce, where the security office murdered Jews saved from the Holocaust and blamed it on Polish patriots. They sent this false message to the Western world on the day of an American national holiday, the 4th of July. The referendum took place on June 30th, 1946, and that's when the communists realized they had no chance in the elections. It was decided that the 1947 elections had to be rigged as well. They took place in January and in only one constituency. The real outcome was made public. Socialist Drobner from Krakow revealed the region's election results, and it turned out the communists had lost 20 to 80%. In the end, the score was announced again, this time in reverse. The communists didn't even bother to falsify the outcome, they simply took the opponent's score. That way, they made sure only their MPs would get into the parliament. They did allow for some Catholic MPs to make it as well, but they either tried to recruit them as secret collaborators or kept them as a meaningless opponent to criticize and put the blame on if needed. The country was in the hands of the Polish United Workers' Party, or PZPR. So the Socialists and Communists allied with the People's Party, or ZSL, and a pseudo-democratic Workers' Party, the Alliance of Democrats. These 3 parties were to make the impression that there was pluralism in Poland, which of course was non-existent.
Pod nazwę Stronnictwa Demokratycznego. Ten trójkąt miał udawać pluralizm w Polsce, którego nie było.
At a certain point, the Western allies encouraged the Polish government in exile in London to come back and partake in Polish politics. I was wondering how that turned out to be.
Jedną z nielicznych rzeczy, którą się udało wynegocjować partnerom zachodnim Stalina,
one of the few things Stalin's Western allies managed to negotiate was the necessity of free elections in Poland. The communists had a big problem with that, since if they could, they wouldn't organize any elections at all in the countries of the so-called People's Democracy. As we know, the elections weren't free at all, but nonetheless the Polish government in exile was under a lot of pressure, losing its credibility. In the end, it was called illegitimate. Only 2 countries still acknowledged it, the Vatican and Ireland, where until the 70s was the embassy of the Polish government in exile. The government remained, but no longer as a legitimate body, but rather a representation of the Polish emigrants' sovereignty abroad. In the meantime, most of the Polish government officials thought it was impossible to change things in the country. One of those who thought the opposite was Prime Minister Stanisław Mikołajczyk, the leader of PSL, an agrarian and Christian Democratic Party, and successor of Prime Minister Władysław Sikorski. As Deputy PM, he came to Poland to join the Provisional Government of National Unity, which was very much needed at the time to provide the nation, which was healing after the war, with some peace. Mikołajczyk quickly realized his efforts were useless and the provisional government controlled entirely by the communists. The members of PSL turned against the communists and paid a terrible price for it. There are countless examples of unlawful prosecution, murders, assassinations, and other terrible things that were done to them, as they were the only official opposition at the time. This opposition would win with 80% of the votes in Krakow, the only city where the outcome of the elections was made public, but this call was taken by the Polish United Workers' Party. Well, the communist secret services weren't established to make life easier for Poles. The party, which should have had 20%, got 80% instead and had taken control of the country, especially oppressing the agrarian PSL movement. With nationalists, they were even able to make some deals. With PSL, on the other hand, they couldn't reach any compromise, since they were too democratic and too popular. The Polish countryside stood against the communists until the very end. Poland never had any rustic proletarian communism. Our farmers were against the regime as well.
Wieś pozostała wolna I suwerenna w swoim kształcie.
Poland was engaged in battle ever since the outbreak of the Second World War, lasting all the way until the last members of the anti-communist resistance movement was hunted down and executed in the early 60s. However, their contributions to the war effort will leave an everlasting impact on history. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Travel, where we're continuing down the royal route, starting with the famous Nowy Świat, that's New World Street in beautiful downtown Warsaw. Apart from lots of elegant shops and restaurants, there's a lot of history on Nowy Świat Street. We'll encounter the spirits of Frédéric Chopin, Joseph Conrad, and none other than General de Gaulle. And we'll also digest the mysteries of the Polish pączki. That's right, the Polish donut. This is Fat Thursday. That's a holiday in Poland, once again. And we'll be seeing how many donuts we can eat on Fat Thursday, as they call it in Poland. That's the last Thursday before Lent. That's the time when we give up various things for a period of 40 days. And one of those things I'm going to give up after this, as you will see, is pączkis. The fun continues as we go in search of the mysterious Polish palm tree. All this and more as we explore beautiful downtown Warsaw, the royal route on Nowy Świat Street. You won't want to miss this. Lots of fun in store. Poland Daily Travel, the best travel stuff about Poland you've ever seen. So stay with us. We're glad you're along for the ride. A very, 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 very big day.
And we are very, 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 very hungry.
We are?
Yes.
We're very hungry. We're going to eat about, how many? You got to eat 40 of these things.
Well,
I got to eat 29. Is that right?
Well,
one for each.
I really appreciate your episodes, but please don't play maths.
I'm not good at math? I'm more of an abstract, I'm more of a theoretician.
Well, okay.
I'm
so
an actual mathematician.
This is the philosophy part you wanted to dig in.
So we're studying the philosophy of the donut, Polish style.
And such huts were appearing in between World War I and World War II in Poland. By the way, fashionable.
We're going inside, and when we come out, I promise you, donuts. So can we order this box of pączkis if the bag has been done? What's your name? Gosia, hi, I'm Will, and this is my show. Now I want, and this is Arthur, by the way, he's my sidekick. He's my buddy. It's a buddy movie. It's all about donuts. Can we have a box with a bunch of different types? Just like all this mixture of different types, right? It's a good idea, don't you think? Do you approve?
You know, I would just take the regular ones.
You would? You don't like these other ones?
With such marmalade, with this...
Are you out? What's this one's here? What are these ones?
Caramel with salt, with rose, plum.
Let's take
okay, you're in charge.
Rose and plum.
Okay. No.
So let's have 4 rose.
Yeah.
Oh, let's have just 5 rows and that's it.
No, let's get a box full. More.
Okay, 5 rows and 5...
We need to show a box.
Plum.
Yeah.
5 rows, 5 plum, and that's just a starter. We are going to hit it. We are going to
eat them all fast. We gotta eat like 100. The best donuts in the world.
What is your favorite flavor?
My favorite flavor, I think, is a regular donut with regular jam.
Regular jam, like multi-fruit.
I don't know. What's your favorite one?
Like the house taste is rose.
Rose, okay. That's my favorite. That's the normal one, right? There you are, ma'am. What's the damage on that? 35? $10. That's amazing. Here, can I put it in? Yeah, you have to put it inside. Yeah. No. It's not PayPass. No. That's $10 for that's a lot of action. And what are your names?
My name is Dolores.
Dolores?
Yes.
Beata?
Elizabeth.
Hi, and I am Will, and this is my show.
Nice to meet you.
Travel about Poland. Yeah.
Thank you for visiting us.
Yeah. We had a great time. We had a great time. And we didn't even mind standing in line. It was worth it. Okay, have a great day.
Dziękujemy, do widzenia.
Thank you.
Wow!
The unveiling. So beautiful, so delectable. And now I will try one. We've come to a secret spot, off the beaten track. Arthur?
Well, if you are twisting my arm, I say okay.
Let's try them.
And maybe I will take this.
Take your little hat there.
I have the plum one,
You ready?
and you
Ready?
have rose.
I have a rose one?
Okay.
Let's go. Oh my God. Look at that. Well, when we finish this, you'll only have 38 to do. And I'll have 27 to do, because we've had 2. We had a secret one before.
I don't think I learned proper English adjectives to describe my pleasure that I am experiencing at the moment.
Yeah. The only thing that worries me is the cameraman and the sound. The 2 cameramen and the sound man who are with us here must be in sheer agony. It's really good. The sound man is very upset.
Man. Look, there is so much jam in here.
They gave you extra.
Dolores gave me extra.
Now I'm gonna try one of these. How many of these do you think we can eat before we get really sick? I have to have our stomach pumped at the hospital. What do you think?
Shall I show you a magical trick? Look, there is a donut.
Have another donut.
And there is not.
Go on.
Man.
Come on.
Okay. Now I will take this one.
What kind is that?
So this is the rose one, so like the most popular.
I think it's very good.
And we've got some powder on it.
What was that lady's name? Dolores? She was nice. Yeah.
But you know, first you asked Gosia for her name, so Gosia might be jealous that you now are talking about Dolores.
I was trying to make the donut ladies jealous. I always do that. When I'm in a donut shop, I put them against each other. I'm like the British Empire. I put one, each lady represents, a different entity.
Okay.
And I try to get them all scrambling around.
And then it finishes with Bill Willexit.
Hey, Scott.
Mom.
You just want to rub it all over your face, don't you?
Look, it's like it's snowing.
Yeah. I tell you, folks, if this didn't make you hungry, then I don't know what, because it's going to make us sick.
You have it all over your face.
Like a child.
I bet let me not.
Good Lord. We're eating donuts on a side street in the middle of Warsaw on Paczki Day, and our crew hates us because they get nothing. And you know what? We're going to eat the rest of it in front of them when we go off, because we're going to say, stop this episode in a second. I'm going to close this box if I can.
Yeah.
And we're going to go back and see Dolores and get some coffee and tea and make these guys sit outside and watch us through the window. Because that's what we like, our power. We're powerful, powerful presenters here on Poland Daily. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I think it's the sugar. It's the sugar. Stop eating donuts. Hold those. Be right back. Poland Daily Travel. Donuts.